Welcome back, Arcadians, and in this week's episode we're going to be taking a look at the late Archer Maclean's arcade collection. Archer Maclean sadly passed away in December 2022 and is well known for various titles he developed during the 80s, including his debut game Dropzone. Now, I had the pleasure of meeting Archer Maclean many years ago now at the retro revival events that Chris Wilkins used to help organise. I found Archer to be really passionate about his arcade collection. He used to love talking about his games, and the fondest memory for me was playing my Nintendo Sheriff arcade machine with him. Now, Archer had a huge collection of arcade games, and he restored a lot of games for other people as well. And I remember seeing an article about his collection in Retro Gamer many years ago, and I believe a lot of his collection was sold whilst he was alive. But a small portion remained, and after his passing it was offered up to the community on UK VAC. So what happened next was Chris Wilkins, who used to help organise the retro revival events and knew Archer quite well, managed to secure a deal with the last remaining part of Archer's collection, and then he kindly offered it back to the community. And he'd seen what we were doing at the Arcade Archive and he wanted to help out, so he said, look, why don't you come down, have a look at what's remaining, maybe some of this stuff can help you get some of your machines working. So last Tuesday, me and Holly and some other collectors who are well known in the community, Tony Temple, Rav of course, who runs UK VAC, and Steve, we all got invited down to the container to see and go through all of what was remaining of Archer's collection. Now, on arriving at the lockup, Chris had already got a lot of the PCBs out, and although we didn't really know what to expect, we kind of knew what PCBs that we had on offer because we were given a list before we arrived, and most of the games were allocated between us, so we all had a game to pick out of the 100 or so PCBs that were on offer. Now, we knew there were a lot of Cinematronics games like Armour Attack and Star Castle, which are very early vector-based games by Cinematronics, but there seemed to also be a lot of games marked Rip-Off, which is also a game by Cinematronics, but Chris was telling us that Archer marked a lot of the games Rip-Off because some of them were bootlegs. He had some great stories, Chris, about Archer, and it was absolutely fascinating listening to them. There was just so much stuff, and we still hadn't got into the main container part yet to see all of his machines, and all the PCBs were in the way, and we were getting carried away chatting about the games, and time was just going past so quickly. So we decided to move all the PCBs downstairs and then allocate them between us, and then we could get into the other lockup, which was full of CRTs. I mean, you name it, it had colour vector monitors, black and white monitors, little CRTs. He had monitors for every arcade machine, a spare for every game. It was absolutely incredible. And then he had all this Tmolding. No wonder Arcade Shop had run out. Archer had it all here. But it's incredible though, because it will all get used up, whether it be in the community, finishing off Archer's cabinets, or even at the Arcade Archive, we could always do with some extra Tmolding. So this is great, it really is. Archer even had his own vinyl printer, so he was printing all of his own side art for all of his arcade machines. So he had a lot of spare blank vinyl left over and a lot of prints as well, which would be nice to go through. And then I was amazed to see amongst all these boxes there was an oscilloscope. There were lots of trays that opened up with hundreds of components in, lots of logic chips that we always need when we're repairing arcade boards, and then there was just hundreds of them. These will all come in useful. We were slowly making headway into the main room, but it just took so long because we kept just getting distracted by chatting about all this fabulous artwork that he created. You know, he made everything from the instruction decals for a lot of his games, a lot of control panel overlays for Asteroids and Stargate, Defender, Gyrus, Tempest, all of the games that he probably owned in his collection. You know, there's even a Dragon's Lair control panel overlay I noticed there as well. So I mean, just he made so much stuff. He basically had his own service for his own arcade, creating everything. He had a lot of bezels as well. A lot of this was a mixture of original and reproduction bezels. Now, this may seem like a lot of stuff, and it may seem like hoarding, but actually, I know what it's like as a collector and someone that runs a museum as well, and I imagine a lot of people in the community would feel the same, is that, you know, when you get an arcade machine and it's got a scratch down the bezel, it's really annoying to look at the screen for a scratch. So you get a reproduction made, but at the same time, once you get that made, you don't want to chuck the original bezel out, so you end up keeping it, and then you end up with just loads of extra original bezels that you just don't want to chuck out because it's all part of the history of the game. So we finally get to the arcade machines, and what a beautiful collection Archer has. Tank 2 by Atari, 1977 I believe. Fantastic game, plays very similar to Combat on the Atari 2600. You had a lovely Robotron Euro version, which is fantastic, same cabinet that we got at the museum. And I know he was a huge fan of Missile Command, and I know Tony Temple owns a Missile Command which was actually restored by Archer. Obviously kept this one for himself, but fantastic cabinet. He had a Defender, an Asteroids, and this, which is something else. I wasn't expecting to see this at all. I'd heard about it, but I was never expecting to see it. This is an Atari Gravatar that Archer had started to convert into his debut game Dropzone, which is an amazing take on Defender. I'm a huge fan of Defender, as you know, guys, and I love Dropzone as well. It's one of my favourite games on the Super Nintendo. Played it a hell of a lot, and Archer's plan was to make an actual arcade cabinet. And as you can see, he got halfway through this. He's done the artwork for the marquee and the side art, which is absolutely jaw-dropping. I love the side art for this. It's just incredible. I believe the control panel overlay he had finished but wasn't a fan of, so whether he had plans to redesign the control panel overlay, I don't know, but hopefully we could get that printed up. Now, as it stands, this cabinet is just an empty shell. There is no CRT or vector monitor inside this cabinet. There was never a PCB found with Dropzone on, so we don't know whether he got to convert the game onto any particular hardware. But what I would like to do with this cabinet is maybe fulfill his dream and, you know, honour his legacy with maybe putting a mister inside this cabinet, running all the different versions of Dropzone. So whatever your favourite or version of Dropzone, or whatever you play the game on, whether it be the Amiga, the Super Nintendo, the NES, you have the option of playing that in this cabinet, but keeping all the artwork intact. So it kind of tells a story, but also honours his legacy and fulfills his dream that maybe, you know, one day this would have actually been in an arcade. Now, you're probably wondering what is going to happen to all of these games. Well, they've got a great future, they really have, because Chris wants to take a select few on the road to his Retro Fusion event, which he does once a year. In fact, he's got an event coming up this August, which I'm actually attending with the Arcade Archive. I'm taking some cabinets along. But the other remaining machines he wants to loan to the museum on the basis that we get them fixed, which is nice. So we'll have some new games for the Arcade Archive. And maybe we can do an Archer Day with Neil, you know, have a lot of his console games on display in the cave and have his arcade games working as well. I think that'd be a nice tribute to Archer. Now, a lot of the PCBs are really obscure and really odd games that I've never seen here in the UK. So I can't imagine they're going to be a lot of use to anyone here, but maybe in the USA, people are going to have games like Grand Track 10 and Superbug, which I've never seen here. So they will get sold off to the community, and all of the money would go into Archer Maclean's Sons Trust. So all the money goes back into the family, which is a nice thing. So finally it was getting near the end of the day and we decided to load up the old transit van with the two games that we were taking back to the arcade archive, which was Millipede and PacMan. Finally we have a PacMan, I cannot believe it. I'm really excited about this. I know a lot of people know that I'm not a huge fan of PacMan, but I know you guys are. There's a lot of Arcadians that love PacMan, and I just want to see your faces when you walk in and see that we have one, because it is an iconic cabinet. Every arcade needs a PacMan, so I'm absolutely delighted to have a PacMan for the museum. I really am. Well, finally got back to museum after a really long day, but thoroughly enjoyed myself. I've got to say a huge thank you to Chris Wilkins for loaning these machines to the museum. You've been a huge help, Chris. Thank you so much with all your help, with all the parts and everything we might need at the arcade archive. We need everything we can right now to get our games working, and hopefully we'll have some of them working for the Retro Fusion event in a couple of weeks' time. I can't wait to attend that. Hopefully we'll have some of Archer's games there as well. And I want to say a huge thank you to Holly as well, who went back the following week, hired another Luton to pick up all the CRTs. Thank you so much, Holly. I don't know where I'd be without you. And my fellow Arcadians, Rav, the godfather of UK VAC, Steve Larkins, and of course Tony Temple. You're my best friends, and I can't think of anyone else I'd like to hang out for the day. It's just been great, it really has. But that's it for this week's video, guys. I hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see you in the next video. Hopefully we'll go through some of this stuff. Until then, take care, and I'll see you on the next one.